be reviewing a show called Fly on the Wall. This was a suggestion from Ryan Rabalkin. We have both listened to it separately. We have not discussed it with each other beforehand. Let's get into it. This is a show hosted by Dana Carvey and David Spade, two Saturday Night Live alums, yucking it up with some of their friends who were also on Saturday Night Live or hosted Saturday Night Live. And this is a wildly successful and popular podcast. It's really high up on the charts. It might be the biggest podcast in the world right now.
Which is baffling to me.
It's surprising. I think people really pine for when SNL was decent.
Yeah.
You know, they want, remember when the Gap Girls skit? Like, how many times did David Spade bring up the Gap Girls skit? You're like, okay, it was cute. I mean, compared to what they're doing today, yeah, it's the most brilliant comedy ever made, but it's a little bit, there's a lot of nostalgia going on.
Oh, so much. Remember when?
Yeah.
Oh, you remember when? You guys remember when? Oh, that was so good.
There's a lot of that. I'm going to start off, if you don't mind.
Please do.
With the first thing that I heard when I was listening, and that would be an ad read.
Oh.
And these guys are both comedians professionally. And so you can only imagine what the ad libbing is going to be like during this ad read for AutoZone.
Top notch, I'm sure.
I like AutoZone, you know, because I love the Twilight Zone, and I like any kind of zone is fun.
Listen,
Go.
this week with AutoZone, Dana, I got to tell you.
Dana Carvey literally did the chip thing. He's like, all right, here's a joke. That's like Twilight Zone. Now you go. Do you have a zone joke? What's your zone joke? So David Spade, and to his credit, a lot of times Dana will take things in a direction where he wants to do impressions and he wants to do his bits and stuff. And David Spade typically gives him nothing.
Yeah.
Typically we'll just go, all right. And then we'll move things on. But in this scenario, he decides to get in on the action with some of the humor that's going on with this AutoZone read.
Just make sure you change your oil and your filter. Don't scrimp. You know what? You go, I think my filter's so good. Meanwhile, it's pitch black. They're like,
meanwhile, you have 7 of them.
I rarely filter my Instagram photos. Okay. For best results, go with full synthetic oil.
So the word filter is how we connected those two dots. So, you know, filtering your car is important on Instagram. You know, that's also a filter.
Yeah, wow.
You get it? It's like if Robin Williams had a podcast. Now you know what that would sound like.
Yeah. And oil rhymes with foil, and that's silver.
What?
Get it?
Oh, right? My gosh, what are you wearing? A tinfoil hat over there? What? Because he sounds a little bit
zany.
Like Alex Jones, everybody. That's why. Get it? Croge, do you have a clip on here that maybe sums up the show for you or something you want to dive into?
I do. I was only able to choke down one episode, and believe me, even that was a fucking chore. But this show opened up with just the two hosts kind of trading back some zingers. You know what I mean? Which, you know, like comedians do.
Sure.
And if there's one thing I learned from listening to Vinny talk about Stuttering John, my number one, always tell the same joke twice.
Did you hear about the mom and the dad who found out their 10-year-old boy was visiting S&M websites?
No, I did not.
And the mom said, what are we going to do? And the dad said, well, we can't spank him.
He'll jizz.
That's nice.
What? Yeah,
that's nice
good.
And quick. I do that as Obama in my stand-up. Hear about the mom and the dad who found out their 10-year-old boy was visiting S&M websites. The mom said, what are we going to do? The dad said, well, we can't spank him.
Come on, Michelle.
Come on, Michelle. Michelle, no.
Dude, you could have just said you do that as Obama. We get it.
Yeah.
We know. Yeah. That's enough.
And again, that was show opening.
Yeah.
That was, you know.
So Dana Carvey has this move where as they're having a normal conversation, recalling stories or talking about different things, he'll just like throw in a celebrity's name and shoehorn it in. And then, I don't know, 10 seconds later, 7 seconds later, he's doing that impression.
Yeah.
So that was his idea all along. I put together a quick super cut of just the names that he throws in randomly. And this is just a small example.
Johnny Carson, Henry Winkler, Al Franken, Conan, Andy Samberg, Seth Meyers, Friedman was, Jason Sudeikis, Stephen Root, Dennis, Will Forte, Fred Armisen, Mr. Milos Forman.
Drop!
It's kind of the formula of this show.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I like David Spade a lot. I think he's very quick. He's funny. He does a good job on this. Dana Carvey, it's almost like he's one of those guys where if he would have just stopped in 95, we'd all be like, man, what a brilliant comedian. Holy cow. Was there ever a better cast member at SNL? I don't know. Top 5, you know? But now that all this time has passed and he comes back and he does this, you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I just like church lady a little too much.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I came into this thinking I was a Dana Carvey fan, I guess.
Right.
But, from remembering him in like George H.W. Bush days
Sure.
or something,
It wouldn't be prudent, that joke.
Yeah, and like, and your parents and like, you know what I mean? You'd hear other people doing that all the time and shit back in the day. But like, he reminded me of when Gilbert, and this is obscure, when Gilbert would do the impression of the 70-year-old Groucho Marx just telling long-winded stories that go nowhere, just like Grandpa Simpson, just fucking non sequiturs, but they never end.
Yeah.
And like, that's Dana Carvey now. He's not really with it. So I listened to an episode where he had Mike Myers on, and I'm like, oh man, these guys, they had some shit over the decades and all this. This was their opening conversation, my number 2. This is like the hot goss they get into.
I don't know what everyone knows, but it is interesting. I felt kind of envious in a way of your roots of having 2 parents from Liverpool. And you're sort of like you're probably had cousins who knew the Beatles or whatever. I mean, that is very interesting. Yes, you did. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a cousin who knew Aunt Mimi.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you'll notice that story about Mike Myers' life was mostly Dana talking.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And they kind of, I've listened to some of the more recent episodes, like Bill Hader and Tim Meadows, and I think they've gotten so much feedback that they're really acutely aware now of what's wrong with the show and some of the issues with their dynamics, because they even like address it.
That's all we do is talk over each other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them interrupting each other and talking over each other because everyone wants to be the witty person and get out the quick joke. And actually, Sarah Silverman, of all people, is uncomfortable with this because she's on a podcast with 2 people just interrupting each other, and she finds that off-putting, as most people would.
So, but
Sarah, I got a question. When you go up sometimes, Dana, she brings
Dana, and that might be an issue for you too later.
What'd I do?
You did interrupt Dana.
I did, but I thought he was finished with his.
We like to interrupt each other. We feel it's a good energy.
It's not good energy to interrupt each other. It's really bad. It's bad form. It's not fun to listen to. It's weird. It's awkward. It puts the guest kind of off kilter a little bit. None of that is good. And because I did listen to Sarah Silverman and I could not clip anything because it was so boring.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah really is just giving up on trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And she used to be so funny. It's really too bad. But this is just a quick example of Sarah. They're talking about having a notebook with you and writing down your jokes. And you're working out new jokes. Maybe you pull the notebook up with you on stage. And this is how bad Sarah's brain has broken by the year 2022.
But I do concede that having a notebook gets you a lot of because they feel like you're working on stuff that the jokes have a feeling of immediacy that give them a lot more credit for the audience. When it's something like, oh yeah, I'm looking at my notebook, but I do know this works, like it's so it.
Finally, Dave was like, okay, is this over? I wrote this down, Cros. Let me read to you what Sarah Silverman just told us.
Yeah.
But I do concede that having a notebook gets you a lot of, because they feel like you're working on stuff that it has. If they have, the jokes have a feeling of immediacy that give them a lot more credit for the audience when it's something like, oh yeah, I'm looking at my notebook, but I do know this works, like it. So it, I put that in the software because I couldn't do that myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what she just said. Maybe this thing will spit it out for me.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Good job.
And yeah, you could do that in like 7 words. I use a notebook so the audience thinks they're fresh.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's
or a lot of times I get bigger laughs from something out of the notebook because they know that it's something new that I'm working on. Like a sentence.
Yeah,
is what she could have used to get a point across.
Which is why I use I always use chord and lyric sheets when I perform. I hate for the audience to think I've actually memorized anything.
I've noticed that about you.
Yeah, I would hate for them to go home thinking like, oh, he actually knows this song. Nope, no, fuck, not even.
This guy's not rehearsing, is he? Okay, good. He's not. Okay. It's confirmed. He has not rehearsed any of these songs. Very good. All right. What else you pick up on here, Crush?
Man, man, let's talk about fucking Dana Carvey. Like, so here's a short one. Number 4, they're talking about the Beatles documentary. And for like one of only 3 or 4 times in this hour and a half, David Spade actually says something. And then Dana Carvey swings in with a joke that's so funny, it cracks himself up.
It was so remarkable. And
I just got to it, guys. I was just watching when I in the other room, swear to God. And
well, I thought you were a big Monkees fan. I didn't know you were a Beatle guy.
No, I'm watching the Monkees. What are you guys talking about?
Beatles? I thought you liked the Monkees. Oh my God, it's so fucking funny. I can't even believe it.
Grandpa Carvey, was that funny in your time?
Yeah, that was a stuttering John level joke.
It really was.
Beatles, I thought you liked the Dave Clark 5. What do you mean? Whoa. Okay, let's get into how Dana asks a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just fucking go with me on these couple clips, man.
Okay.
So I think the question is, if I'm interpreting correctly, hey, Mike Myers, what was it like when you started SNL? I think that's the question.
Okay.
You tell me if I'm right or wrong. Number 5.
You had your path. I had mine. And I think Mike's is kind of a singular path because he came in, the cast was going good. Mike Myers is coming in. Who? You know, and then you had to come in. It wasn't like 3 people came in or someone else. It was just and Mike
one.
was the first new guy after the original cast. It was like 2 seasons in. And so that's kind of unique about your experience. So just explain how that felt. Because what was that like to come in and then you melded and did brilliant, and we were just, we were like the Beatles but at that time it must have been strange.
It was terrifying. I hadn't seen the show in a long time because I was living in England, and
I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer it in the following way. He pretty much like mapped out how he needs to answer that question.
Oh my God. It's and the question was, what was it like your first day?
Yeah, right.
I mean, really? Okay. Number 6, he asked some kind of a cultural question. Like, you spent time in England. What about this little turn of phrase?
And maybe you know this, Mike, this is just an insert. It always made me laugh when they'd say, you're going to jump the pond. So the Atlantic Ocean became referred to as a pond. Was that from Londoners or anyway?
It feels like an English understatement.
Yeah,
I mean?
kind of.
What kind of question is that?
What's the origin of this phrase?
Why did they call it fish and chips, Mike Myers? Tell me all about it. Was that in the suburbs? It started in the city? Where did it start? You eat fish and chips? What's like?
Who coined that term specifically?
Yeah, what the fuck kind of question is that?
Give me the surname, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. My very last one of these questions, number 7. Now, this one is, I had to speed it up, but see if you can go with this. This is a 1-minute question.
I think the writer performer is kind of the most potent comedian. Not all comedians write their stuff, but in your case, you were just every bit as much a writer. Tina Fey, the same, and a great performer. Yeah. What I'm kind of interested now that we're to this section is what you brought to SNL that first year was so outside. It had its own frequency, its own sensibility. And I always say it's Canadian, British, and American because you're always watching America as a kid, right? From Canada. So that when you came in, and I wanted to walk through some of those things you did on that first season and then finished with this part of it when we were touring, and Mike and I did some dates and how hard you had landed with the audience because we were playing 3,000 seaters and you'd come out and they were going crazy. So anyway, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I just wanted to lay that out there. That's a long way of saying. So you come in, the first thing I saw, I'll start it this way. So Mike comes in, he's very Canadian in the sense that he's shy and sweet, unassuming. And the first thing I saw you do, I think you had a suit on, you had a French accent, and you were peeing yourself with some kind of device.
It was fortuitous. It was as if it was French Saturday Night Live.
Mike Myers has to shoehorn in an answer to a question that's never going to come.
That's never going to show up.
Never going to come. Hey, I have a question for you. 9 paragraphs go by of which he's explaining, hey, this is what you were like, and this is what your first bit was like, and this is what the writers were like. This is everybody we work with. This is the building we were in. This is what our office was like. Anyway, wasn't that great? Oh, but before you answer that, let me talk a little bit more about.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's unfucking terrible.
So another thing they do on this show, and this is very popular in podcasting, they have a conversation about the conversation they're going to have.
Yes.
And I don't know why. I don't know how it's necessary. They don't really add anything. They just say, hey, we had Bill Hader on the show and we talked to Bill Hader about this and this. That's like, well, yeah, I know. We'll get there. Yeah. I'll hear all this. And this goes on for 10 minutes with them talking about it. And here's an example of why you shouldn't do that. Because Dana Carvey's got this compliment for Bill Hader that he thinks is a real zinger. So not only does he tell David Spade this before the show starts, but then he says it again to Bill Hader after the show has started.
Let me say this about Bill Hader. If I was having a conversation about who was the greatest SNL cast member, if someone said Bill Hader, I wouldn't slug him in the face. I wouldn't slug him in the face. I wouldn't get mad. I'd really go, huh? Put it this way, Bill. This is what I say to people. If someone said to me Bill Hader was the greatest of all time sketch player on SNL, I wouldn't slug them in the face.
That's really sweet.
You'd have to think.
That seems like coming from you guys. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a great comment. Twice makes it even worse because it really puts the spotlight on it. Like Dana Carvey thought that was gold. And since we're talking about Dana, let's talk about how funny he is. He was remembering a time that he was hanging out with Sarah Silverman during the 40th anniversary of SNL.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a little behind the scenes kind of fun. This is what it's like to hang out with Dana Carvey.
Sarah Silverman has a great sense of humor. I hung out with her at the 40th, at the party, the 40th anniversary of SNL. And my running gag that night was just checking my phone and saying, "You're trending right now." So that was my runner back then.
You know, it's not funny, but you know, I get it.
Wow, that's great. He'd look at his phone and be like, "Hey, you're trending right now." And I bet Sarah probably didn't roll her eyes until he walked away.
Yeah.
She probably was a good enough friend to be like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's pretty good." Good stuff there. This is interesting too, because you talk about how much these two guys interrupt each other and how obnoxious that can be. Here's an intro to an episode, and I have to say, they're having too much fun. You know, like you want to be playful on a comedy show and you want to have some fun banter.
Yeah.
If I were giving notes, I'd say, guys, have less fun with it.
Tim Meadows. Everyone loves Tim Meadows.
Tim Meadows is an old buddy. I just immediately interrupted you. Tim Meadows is an old buddy of both of ours. He did
Yeah,
SNL.
he really is. I interrupted back. Tim Meadows. It's like tennis. Go ahead. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to zip my trap.
It's like tennis. It's very, very boring.
Yeah.
It's the same shit for hours, just like tennis.
It's like a sport that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
All right. I got the board right
Yeah,
now. I'll just
go
keep
for
going. They talk about Will Smith. And I don't know if you've heard the news, Croge, but Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
The Fresh Prince?
At the Oscars.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Why didn't anyone mention that?
I know. So it's about time we get some opinions.
Even Patty Seacups did an episode on this.
Oh, I can't wait to hear his take.
I brought 0 clips. You're welcome.
Okay, good. You can maybe summarize it for us later. So this is David Spade after a very long rant that I have also sped up to spare us all.
Yeah.
And at the end of this very long rant, he gives his take on it.
Will Smith, to me, nicest guy. And I think when you have an image that you have to guard, when you're getting to the stratosphere of stardom, The Rock, Brady, Tom Brady, Wilson, like everything isn't overly calculated, but everyone's like, say the right thing here, do the right thing. You know what I mean? They kind of have to play to the world now. Like, I have to keep everyone happy and be this big star. And when you deviate from that in such a huge way, it's because people, I think, in this day and age, especially last couple years, really appreciate authenticity and sort of celebrities behind the scenes. Are you like a real person? And when you come out like that, do something so out of the blue, out of character, you almost question everything. You go, wait, what's going on here? I think it's tough for Will Smith. I don't think he's a horrible guy. This thing happened. I'm not a canceller. I'm not that kind of guy. So I would just say it'll fix itself at some point between him and Rock. But that's all. I have no more opinions.
Well, it's like Vin Diesel.
Is that his opinion? I don't know.
It'll fix itself is his hot take on this. Maybe you don't need to bring it up if you don't really have anything to say. You know what, guys? That whole thing that's going on that everyone's talking about, and there's multiple episodes of every podcast talking about it, I think it'll probably just fix itself in the long run.
I just want to say that sure was a thing that happened.
Did you guys all see that thing that happened? Because I did too.
Yeah.
So you heard there, Dana Carvey decides that he's going to bring this into like Fast and the Furious for some reason.
Yeah.
And this is just another example of Dana just wanting to do movie scenes and just shoehorning things that don't make any sense.
Vin
Is that his
Diesel
opinion? I don't know.
in the Fast and the Furious, you know, where they're going across the canyon with the car upside down, and the passenger goes, "Was this the plan?" He goes, "This was always the plan." And you just wonder when Will was getting out of the limo driver's pretty familiar. "Hey, have a good night tonight. You know, don't punch anyone on the stage." I mean, somebody snapped.
Yeah.
And you can always tell when somebody snapped. That means it's not the plan. Just like,
Yeah,
boom.
it was not the plan.
Whatever was buried underneath went, yow.
Yeah.
how he tied that together with a scene from Fast and the Furious is almost impressive. That's like autism level of like, yeah, reminds you of that time when Vin Diesel's in the car that's flying across the canyon. They're upside down. It's just like you know, the limo driver for Will Smith probably had a similar line to him.
Yeah.
No, probably not.
It was just like Harry Potter. Yeah.
So then they're talking about the Vanity Fair party.
Yeah.
After the Oscars, you have to, it's invite only, and it tells you how big of a celebrity that you are, knowing what time slot you get and whether you get a +1 or not. And Dana has a strategy for getting into this party. It's so good.
There's no Dana Carvey, and then you mess up your hair and slowly turn and go, is there a Garth?
No, it's like from the movie.
Oh.
I'd like to get by now, and I'd have a little amateur stun gun for Wayne's World fans. Excuse me, I'd like to get by now, and then I would just shock the guy.
Remember that thing that somebody wrote for my character? That's what I would do.
In 1989.
Yeah, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah, I remember.
Isn't that hilarious, guys? That thing that was from that thing that you saw that you know me from?
Yeah.
So then Dana Carvey says, just to piss me off, that the Grammys were awesome. He goes, yeah, you know, the Academy Awards, they had that little issue there, but the Grammys were great.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there's a guy who hosted the Grammys named Trevor Noah, the least funny comedian in show business. And David says, okay, I'm glad you liked the Grammys, but there were no jokes in it at all.
The jokes are kind of tepid only because you don't want to cause a national worldwide ruckus. So he's like, hey, Billie Eilish. Is Eilish really your last name? No, it probably is. Actually, it's a really good name. It fits you and you're a great singer and everything's going well. Anyway, let's look at this table. I'm like, are these jokes? I think he's just giving compliments because you can't do a joke anymore.
Who can't do a joke anymore? Trevor Noah? Because I would agree. I would agree with that. But I'm not sure what he was talking about there. I don't think they really go after comedians too much. And the last clip I have in this series. So Dana, of course, enjoyed Trevor Noah. You know, he's that guy. He's the one person in America who enjoys Trevor Noah for some reason.
I laughed my ass off. I was at home. He said, hey, folks, how you doing? I don't know what, the way he said it or something. I was like, that is funny. What's up?
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
That is a good line. I mean, I'll give it that.
It's not bad. It's not bad. All right.
I'm going to write that down. Hey,
I'll volley this over the net back to you.
Well, so I listened to the episode with Mike Myers, and for most of it, he came off as a very tragic guy.
Mike Myers,
a lot of serious conversation.
Yeah.
It was a lot of just as a for instance,
you know what's weird about Mike Myers? He's one of the most successful comedic actors of all time. You think about the Shrek franchise.
Sure.
If you think about obviously Austin Powers, Wayne's World, so many things, but people like to focus on his failures, and I think that gets under his skin. Like,
yeah.
The Love Guru never lived out.
I think the Love Guru was bad enough that it wiped out everything
right
before it, you know?
You know what? Like, for example, Dan Aykroyd in Caddyshack 2 should have never got another acting job in his life. That should have been the end of it right there. People should have been like, okay, this guy sucks. But for some reason, he was able to get Ghostbusters after that and continue on with his career. Whereas Mike Myers are just like, yeah, sorry, man, we can't get that steak off of you from the Love Guru. We're done here.
Well, he played the Cat in the Hat, made boner jokes for little kids. Everybody loved that.
Oh God,
everybody was into that.
I've not seen that.
Well, so every question that Dana had, he would be, so what was it like when you started this? When you joined Second City? When you joined SNL? He'd be like, oh, that was right when my dad got sick. And then this, and then, oh, that was right when my dad had this terrible accident. That was right when my dad died. Like every story tied into a family tragedy.
How many times did his dad die? Jesus.
I don't want to like mock it, but it sounded like he had a really long illness and it was just a very tragic thing for him and his whole family. It sounded like his entire career, he was really depressed. And it, boy, it was quite a conversation. But save those laughs because you're going to need it when he gets into the story. My number 8 is Mike Myers' first story.
Yes.
And I was in a comedy double act with a guy named Neil Malarkey, who's, you know, really, of course, my dad was like, what's your comedy partner's name? I said, Neil Malarkey. And he said, well, I guess, you know, Bill Shenanigans wasn't available because his name's Malarkey, you know, and
some good sympathy laughs there. Then he goes for this story about how he had a duel with Marty Short, number 9, and I can't make heads or tails of this. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
And I ended up in this long freeze tag with Martin Short.
Like an improv
Oh,
game.
okay.
As it was described to me, is that Martin Short looked at me and I looked like I was 14, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And was starting to name drop like as a way of saying you won't know any of these people. And I matched every name drop for a name drop, you know what I mean?
Okay, got it.
And so he was like, I was with Stevie Spielberg at the blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I said, that's when Liza Minnelli came. We were on a
Oh,
yacht
okay.
drinking white Puerto Rican rum. And because there's a white Puerto Rican rum commercial that had Liza Minnelli and whatever. And it became this duel, you know what I mean?
Great story. Compelling and rich.
And his point was like, so he was name dropping guys that I wouldn't know. So he was like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, right. The one that everyone knows.
What?
Yeah. You ever hear of a guy named Tom Hanks? Yeah.
And this was on an improv stage, and this was like how he made his bones, back in the day and all this shit. So then Dana and Mike get into the member whens. And you're not going to fucking believe some of these stories because they don't even remember when.
Okay.
Number 10, there was a comedy character that he used to pitch that was based on a Dungeons and Dragons character.
My character was Lothar. And
when I lie with
Lothar.
the woman, she comes. I don't know what
there is much that I could tell you. It's all the come, let us talk of stories of the hunt. That type of.
Okay. And that was the point. I mean, I didn't cut anything out.
Right. Good.
Okay. Then they remember another bit, number 11. This one's got a theme song, though, and it's pretty fucking catchy. I'll give them that.
I wish they would just talk about Phil Hartman's characters instead. Hey, Mike Myers, you were pretty good at us. Now, remember Phil Hartman? He was really funny.
Done.
And I love the theme. Do you remember the theme? Didn't it have a song? He's
middle-aged man.
Wait, go ahead.
Had a whole.
Can you sing it, Mike, or what?
Was it middle-aged man? Something and
Middle-aged man. Middle-aged.
Something and a gut. Middle-aged man. And the catchphrase are you looking at my gut? I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Which of course is my actual thing I say all the time now. Because I have, of course.
I had a friend who was a great something back somewhere. Glory days. Well, something in the young girls like young girls eye. Glory.
Can you sing it for us? Well, I don't know the melody or the lyrics, but sure. Yeah, I'll give it a go. Why not?
Yeah, tell me that joke you told in that pitch room 45 years ago. What? And then this was their big SNL story was number 12, and I don't even know the fucking point of this.
Do you remember the sketch we did where we were playing celebrities idiotically trying to advise them how to play hockey?
I do, and I remember it's like, what if you made the puck out of flubber?
Yeah.
Flubber.
And the funny part was Phil was doing Jack Nicholson, and he always would say Wayne's moniker or nickname before he'd start to talk in rehearsal. He'd go, "Great one." And Wayne would lose it every time, And I was pulling out my silly John Travolta from 1975 going, maybe just everybody should just go right at the net super fast. Just go right, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was supposed to say that's when they had Wayne Gretzky on the show.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't think that would have helped. It was a 20-minute story. They're like, of all the hosts, and that's what they focused on was Wayne Gretzky. And they just went on and on and on about.
Well, Mike Myers is Canadian, so they wanted to make him feel at home. You want to talk about hockey? We can talk about hockey.
Yeah. Well, when did you meet him? And then what'd you tell your family? And what skits did you do?
Yeah.
I love this clip for a whole lot of reasons. Number 13. This was kind of more towards the end of the show.
Well, I remember the Sinead episode, and when I saw that, I don't know. I guess she felt that maybe we shunned her, but I was just shy and nervous. I wasn't upset about it. I know a lot of Catholics. I'm very fond of them, but there were issues with that church for a while.
She might have been had a little bit of a point at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I can't have a conversation with that person. I mean, and I would have given her a hug if I thought back in time that she was feeling that ostracized and wounded by making a political statement on Saturday Night Live. So anyway, this will be the thing that'll trend now.
This will be the thing that'll trend.
No, Sinead O'Connor is no longer a thing that we're talking about.
A guy that was famous 40 years ago, a lady that was famous 40 years ago, and a thing that happened on television 40 years ago.
That's
That's
no
what's gonna
longer a
trend.
controversy.
And the controversial thing was, I should have given her a hug.
Yeah. She doesn't look like the kind of person who wants a bunch of hugs from people, by the way. I could be wrong.
But how does that escape your mouth? This will be the thing that's trending. Like, be
Yeah.
like, she was a fucking cunt, and I should have kicked her in the end, like, or
Yeah,
whatever.
right. That would have
would've
been interesting.
That would have been at least interesting.
Yeah.
It would have trending. What the fuck?
Of all the things you associate with the Catholic Church these days, Sinead O'Connor is not on that list at all. It's not even close to being on that list. I know it was very controversial at the time.
Yeah.
And so these guys are remembering it as if like people are going to be hearing us talking about this. It's going to be trending on Twitter tomorrow. No.
Yeah.
Everyone's over it. Stupid.
And it's like people are okay shitting on the Catholic Church.
That's what I mean,
nowadays. It's
right? Like that's
yeah,
become like honestly, if
It's
Sinead
not-
O'Connor did that today, it'd be a standing O. I would
yeah,
imagine.
it's not the
it's not a
the
big deal.
blasphemy it once was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought this was kind of interesting because Dana Carvey, he's never really had a vehicle. They tried to do the Dana Carvey show after he left SNL, and that was supposed to be a huge hit. If you look at the cast and the writers, it was like, how could this fail? This is so amazing, and it failed. And if you look at movies he's done, like Master of Disguise, I think is one of them, like those never work out. Where Dana Carvey is good is when he's a sidekick or playing with some type of character in someone else's thing. And so I was wondering about the music that they picked for this podcast.
You mean the one where we had a guy do Trump and I did Biden?
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound like a little bit of a sideways ballroom blitz, which is like
Yeah.
from Wayne's World?
Yeah,
I feel like it's supposed to give you like that Wayne's World feel to it.
Sound alike, feel alike kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Now, what we haven't really talked about yet is the fact that, and I don't know how it was with, I didn't listen to Mike Myers. I would imagine they talked a lot about Lorne Michaels since he based Dr. Evil on him. But this show is the Lorne Michaels impression show. Like everyone comes out and does their Lorne Michaels impression. They talk about Lorne Michaels. It's all inside baseball.
Oh yeah,
on Lorne Michaels all the time. And here's some inside jokes for us.
I do know that the first year Lauren was like this. Guys, we got a big show tonight. Let's try to get it going.
And then by year 5, Lifetime limousine. You know, Paul and I, sometimes we go and we just buy socks. Really? I mean, he had a car. He had Eugene. He had a driver. I mean, he was an adult.
Want to come by 88 for dinner? Remember 88?
Never underestimate the value of lasagna. Whatever.
How the fuck would anyone know what they're talking about? At a certain point in the show, I give Dana credit here. He wises up and says, hey guys, we might want to explain to you what the fuck we're talking about.
But I just want to, because we're podcasting, just very quickly explain it to people who don't understand.
Yes.
Good idea. Good idea.
We weren't at dinner with you guys in 1987 with Lorne Michaels. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Someone in the Discord wrote they also do a ton of Dennis Miller. Yes, that is one of Dana Carvey's go-tos, is his Dennis Miller impression. And this one's great because it ends with such a thud. Listen to how little confidence Dana Carvey has after he does this.
Come on. What are you, the false ending guy or something?
What are you, the false ending guy or something? I'm doing the voice. What else? I can juggle too. He's like, will that work? Will that help? And then I have one more thing on Lorne. And this is actual audio. You won't hear this anywhere else. Of Lorne Michaels listening to this podcast. And he wasn't actually thinking that this was going to be recorded, but I was able to sneak in a recorder with my friend Purple, and we were able to get this audio.
Dana, is this ever going to work?
And the answer is no. Oh, last thing I want to play on here is this Al Franken impression. I played it on Drew and Mike's show this week, so you might have heard it. But this is possibly the worst impression Dana Carvey's ever done. And he worked with the guy. Like, you would think it's one thing to see someone on TV and you try to figure out what it is. But Al Franken's the guy he's like sat down next to for hours on end writing skits and stuff.
I think it was Al Franken that had just observed after you hosted or something. You know, it'd be really nice to have like a really good looking cast member, just as a person to put in different ways along with character work. But yeah, he told Mike and I that when Mike and I were like, what? What about us?
Did that sound anything like him?
No.
No.
In the episode I listened to, they bring him up 4 or 5 different times just so they can do that. thing.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Then they just move on to the next thing. It's very crazy.
Hilarious.
I'd love to talk about the closing of the show if I
Yes.
could. So the very last 2 minutes, they say goodbye to the guests. We're just back with the two hosts, and they answer an audience question. My number 14, an audience member writes in with a question so red hot that I mean it just blew the doors off the place.
Good.
Andrew Laposha. Hello, guys. Thanks for what you're doing. I like when they say that first. You're welcome. It's so awesome. My question, who did you most want to host SNL that never got to? I'd say Tina Fey. That's my answer for everything.
Who did you want to host SNL as your fucking audience question? It doesn't even count. That doesn't even count. Go back to the well. And I at least give David Spade credit because he just answers every question with Tina Fey, no matter what the question is. And I respect that. That's a good bit.
That is pretty good. Can I offer some insight into this? Because when I was a teenager, I was working at a restaurant, and my favorite thing to do was to get on the radio. I would call in to our local rock station, and I would request music just to hear myself on the radio. And I always requested Foreigner. And the reason why I did that, not because I like Foreigner, I certainly do not, but I knew that they would be playing Foreigner at some point in that hour. And so they're like, oh, great, this guy wants to hear Foreigner. Foreigner's already going to be played. So they would play me saying that. I wonder if this asshole sent in that question knowing that that's such a fucking lame question. They go, okay, yeah, we'll answer this one. Wow.
It's so
great
bad.
question, guys.
And
Who the fuck could possibly care about that or want to hear Foreigner is my point.
And it leads into, you're not gonna believe this, an impression. But it's a really unfunny impression bit, number 15.
I would like to have been on the show when Neil Young was the host.
Oh, yeah, because you love
I would
Neil
have had
Young.
Neil Young on Church Chat. Well, our voice is sort of like a lady's voice, isn't it? Old man. You know what's really ironic is Church Lady. This is what Judd Apatow would help me with, make an album where Church Lady sings Neil Young. Because I can't sing, but as Church Lady singing, it sounds exactly like Neil Young. Okay, I'll show you. First, Neil Young. Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you were. Church Lady. Oh man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you were. Well, isn't that special?
I have a question. What if the church lady went to the store and bought some broccoli?
There you go.
What would that sound like? What would that song sound like?
And here's the thing. That is not a funny Neil Young bit.
It's not.
Number 16. This is a funny Neil Young bit.
This is every Neil Young song you've ever heard. Dead dog lying in the ditch. Cigarette smoker has an itch. Secret whores with ancient vices. Lucky has the lowest prices. I'm getting higher. I'm getting higher in the world.
Now that's how you do a Neil Young bit. You just need a time machine to go back to 1996 and watch Dana Carvey when he was still funny.
Or when someone was writing jokes for him.
That too.
Could possibly be part of it too.
Oh, I fucking hated this. This was such an awful fucking show.
Well, I can't say it was awful. I've heard awful shows. It wasn't awful. It was just boring.
I found it really hard.
I was going, and it's just so people know, I'm a professional podcast clipper. It's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
You put a podcast in front of me, I'll find a clip. I'll find another clip. I'll put clips together. I'll put a little special effect in between. This show went on for 25 minutes, and I realized I was just staring out the window. I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be pulling clips. I was not paying attention at all. Just fucking droning sound of two guys cracking each other up and interrupting each other.
Yeah, after an hour and a half, I had the least amount of clips I ever pulled from a show. And then and then half the clips, I was like, why? I think I just took the screenshot because I knew I needed to clip something. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta clip something. You gotta bring something in.
Oh, I've been there.
Croach, it took me so long to find clips of the show. I don't have anything else to talk about today.
Okay, folks.
Yeah.
Guess what? The episode's over.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming over, Croach.
I'll be in the subreddit this week.
Here's a quick clip that's just kind of silly. They're talking about Tim Meadows before Tim Meadows comes on the show, and they start telling a story, which, again, why not just wait for Tim to get on and talk to him about it since he was involved.
He and I bought a motorcycle. I bought a motorcycle that was Chris Farley's recently online, and I didn't know who I'm bidding against, but I finally bought it, and then I got a text from Tim saying, dude, you just outbid me. So we're online bidding against the world. I just thought, Farley's old Harley from Chicago, I remember this. Shoot, I'd like to have, that'd be cool to just have in my living room or, whatever. And then he goes, hey, I don't have anything at Chris's. And I said, oh, I was bidding against you? And he said, can I have it? And I said, I said, just pay me what I pay. You can have it, because he doesn't have anything of Chris's, and he's from Chicago. And they were really, really tight.
I love that story.
What was the point of that?
Good Lord.
Why did he need to do that? This would be my only suggestion. Their show's a lot bigger than ours, so they're doing something right. Well, they did something right 30 years ago when they're on TV. My suggestion would be cut out all the horse shit in the beginning. I know you got to get your ad reads in, but cut out all that horse shit in the beginning where you guys talk to each other about what you're about to talk about.
Yeah.
It's so unnecessary. And these shows are long.
Yes.
They feel very long.
Yes, they feel a lot longer, but they are objectively long.
I love Bill Hader. I am one of the biggest Bill Hader fans
Super
around.
talented guy.
And I could not get into the show. I couldn't find it interesting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to. And I watched Barry. I enjoy Barry. And I'm just like, I can't follow this at all.
Who are these podcasts? WATP.